Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for this informational webinar about the GARE Regranting program. I am Jenny Peterson-Brandt, Arts and Cultural Affairs Coordinator with the City of Dubuque. So in today's webinar, our agenda for this afternoon is to go over important dates that you'll want to know about, including deadline, the review process, timing for distribution of contracts and award notifications, and things of that nature. We will go over eligibility requirements as they relate to who is eligible to apply and what expenses are eligible to be covered. We'll talk about funding guidelines, the rating criteria that will be applied to applications. We'll go through the application steps, which will include reviewing the online application portal. We'll talk about the review process and what you can expect in terms of the timeline for the work done on our side of things after you apply. And then I'll offer a handful of helpful tips to aid you in the application process, and then provide time for question and answer at the end of today's webinar. So the purpose of the GARE Regranting program, first thing to note is this is a one-time non-recurring grant program, which is being funded through a grant that we received from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE. The funds are meant to be used to support the work of eligible Dubuque nonprofit organizations and their work to empower and elevate Black, Indigenous, and people of color creativity and culture. The program seeks to provide funding that will result in public-facing arts and cultural programs and activities that aim to diversify representation, cultivate belonging, and create an equitable community. So in terms of those important dates that I wanted you to be aware of is that Friday, June 3rd is the application deadline to submit to the GARE program through our online application portal via Slide Room. The original deadline that is marked on program materials is Friday, May 27th, but we have extended it to Friday, June 3rd because of a delay in releasing program application materials. You do have until 11:59 p.m. on June 3rd to submit your application. At that time, the Slide Room portal will basically turn off and the application will no longer be available for edits or submission. Following you putting in an application in the month of June, all applications will be reviewed by either the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission's, the grants committee of that commission, or by members of the AEI working group from the Arts and Culture Master Plan. By July 5th, or actually on July 5th, we expect that the scores that are reviewed, which are forwarded to the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission to draft a funding recommendation. That funding recommendation will go to the city manager and then on to the city council for approval at their July 5th city council meeting. Following approval by city leadership, then we will send out award notifications as promptly as possible, followed by contracts being released to you for you to sign. By August, we would want those signed contracts to be back to us so that we can get them fully executed with the city manager's signature. We'll ask for you to submit an invoice for payment. This grant program does award out the full grant award up front after the signing of the contracts. So you'll submit an invoice for that full amount of your award to us to then ask for funding to be dispersed through our finance office, which can take a couple of weeks after you submit an invoice because of the timing of when checks are actually cut by the city of Dubuque. And the final item to note on our timeline piece is that by August 31st of 2023, we do require that a final report is submitted on the project that was the activity that was paid for through the GARE Regranting program. One thing I did forget to add on this slide is that the slide notes that the final reports are to be submitted in writing through the slide room portal. We will also be offering the opportunity as an alternative to submitting a written final report that organizations can do a presentation for the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission or other arts and culture partners in the city, so that we can use this as a learning opportunity for organizations to learn about the great work that others are doing to advance DEI within the arts and culture sector. So the next thing to cover is whether or not your organization is eligible to apply. So there are basically 3 different groups that can apply for this funding. The funding is awarded to organizations, those that are either an established, recognized nonprofit 501c3 organization based in the city of Dubuque. Groups that have their own specific mission, governing structure, or budget, but who may operate under the umbrella of a larger fiscal agent are also eligible to apply. Again, that group has to operate within the city of Dubuque. And the third type of group that can apply for this funding are those groups which are established groups that have some history of working in service to the broader community, but they may not just have gone through the steps of organizing as a nonprofit or securing fiscal sponsorship yet. So any of those 3 groups are eligible to apply. In the application process, we do ask for evidence of your status as one of those 3 types of organizations is uploaded. For 501c3 organizations, you will upload your federal designation letter. For organizations which are fiscally sponsored, you will upload a letter signed by the executive director or board chair of the organization who acts as your fiscal agent that is recognizing and acknowledging that yes, you are indeed operating under their fiscal umbrella. And for the third group, what you will want to put together to provide evidence is just a synopsis of the history of your work in the community and how you act as a nonprofit, and potentially that you might be in the stages of applying to get 501c3 designation, and that just might not be awarded yet. So you can tell us how your group fits within that category in a simple letter that is signed by whoever is leading the charge for your organization or group. So those entities that are not eligible to apply for this funding, you cannot be a for-profit organization or business. Individuals are not eligible to apply for this funding, but we do anticipate that many organizations will be partnering with individual artists and paying individual artists as part of the projects or activities to be conducted. And any organization or group that operates outside of Dubuque city limits is uneligible for this funding, since it is a City of Dubuque arts and culture program. So the next thing to cover is to talk about what projects and expenses are eligible for funding. The way that this program has defined eligible projects and activities are those activities which aim at engagement and inclusion of BIPOC or Black, Indigenous, people of color visionaries, creatives, and culture bearers in organizational development, project planning, or program delivery. Activities could also be those that broaden the outreach and promotion of BIPOC-centered programs and activities that your organization is producing. And projects and activities could also include efforts to expand access to arts and culture experiences for BIPOC families, youth, and citizens in Dubuque. The types of expenses that can be covered by or paid for by the GARE funds, those include artist or contractor fees, consultant fees, licensing or subscription fees, materials and supplies, space and equipment rental, domestic travel, marketing and publicity costs, equipment purchases under $500. And with any of these eligible expenses, the expenses have to be incurred during the FY 2023 funding period of July 1, 2022 to July 30th of 2023. Ineligible expenses to be covered by the grant funds that but that could be part of the project but would have to be covered by matching funds are those expenses that relate to parts of the project that occur prior to or after the funding period as it's defined of July 1, 2022 to June 30th of 2023. The grant cannot cover projects or activities that are not open to the public. The grant cannot cover general operating expenses, cannot cover religious, political, and sports activities, cannot cover fundraising or benefit events. The grant cannot cover competitions, contests, or awards to honor or recognize achievement. The grant cannot cover food, beverage, or catering costs. This is one of those, though, that might be part of your project, but would have to be covered by funds outside of the GARE funds. They could be covered by in-kind or cash match funds. The grant funds cannot cover international travel. They cannot cover capital projects, including construction or property renovations. They cannot pay for major equipment purchases, and those are equipment purchases that are valued over $500. That's how we define a major equipment purchase in our programs. You cannot regrant the funds to another entity to use for, you cannot grant them out to somebody else to use. The grant funds cannot cover lobbying activities, and the grant funds are not to be used for the acquisition or the straight purchase of artwork for a permanent collection, including most public art installations. In terms of the funding guidelines, applicants can, with this program, applicants can ask for up to $2,000 in grant funds. You can rate, the minimum request is $500. The total funds that we have available to award out through this program is $12,500. And again, those funds are coming to us from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And I think I've mentioned this before, but there is no match required with the GARE applications. We do anticipate, however, and have provided in the application, the opportunity for you to tell us about matches that you might have, because it's likely that projects or programs could exceed that $2,000 maximum limit. And so if your project is bigger than that $2,000 and you do have match funds covering other parts of it, we want to know about that so we can get a true view of the entire breadth and scope of your project and program that you're going to be offering. So again, there's a room in the application to provide matching funds or to identify matching funds, but it is not required to identify matching funds with this program. So one of the things that we thought with this, since it is a new funding program and it is designed towards elevating the voices of marginalized populations in our community, we wanted to provide some examples of things that some of you might be thinking about, and some of the projects that we've heard some of you are working on that sort of relate to this grant program. So some of the examples that we might expect to see coming in for applications would be projects or activities that look at contracting BIPOC visionaries, creatives, or culture bearers as consultants to facilitate the co-creation of programs or to infuse DEI in your organizational culture. So this is kind of the idea that instead of asking BIPOC voices to be volunteers in your planning processes, that you are actually offering stipends for them to be there and to take the time to inform the work of your organization. So you're basically paying them as a consultant to help your organization. With that in mind, it might be necessary to, and you could think about offering youth program if having childcare is a barrier to BIPOC voices participating in the planning process for your organization. So you could use these funds to create opportunities where there's activities being provided for kids so that adults can participate in the planning with your organization. Or you might end up finding that there are needs to use funding to help remove transportation barriers that might hinder BIPOC participation and access to your organization and to the meetings that you're holding. Other ideas might include offering paid opportunities that engage BIPOC creatives and culture bearers in providing behind the scenes services, such as videography or photography or graphic design work for your organization, or offering paid opportunities that present BIPOC creatives and culture bearers as the providing them with offering representation and a space for them to perform and present in public facing programs that you're offering. So this might include hiring visual artists, musicians, actors, directors of that nature to actually be part of presenting your public facing programs that you're working on. Another idea might be related to securing translation services so that you can produce informational materials or program forms related to your organization in multiple languages. This might include things like translating scholarship forms, membership forms, major promotional informational materials about your organization. Again, securing those translation services to produce them in multiple languages. And another thought could be to, if you are offering programs that center BIPOC voices and stories, that maybe these are outside of your, the typical types of programs that you're offering, and you see that there is a need to extend the marketing or the engagement efforts beyond what you normally do for outreach tactics, that you can apply for this funding to help you broaden the reach and to engage bigger and more audiences in those BIPOC centered programs that you might be offering. I'll go back to this slide just a second to one other thought that I didn't have a chance to add on to here is also the idea, and actually relates to the first slide that we opened up with in this presentation, which was a photo from the Northeast Iowa School of Music and work that they have done with Marshallese youth or Pacific Islander youth in our community. As part of that program, that photo is from, they didn't receive funding through this GARE program, but through some resources elsewhere. The Northeast Iowa School of Music was able to secure and provide culturally appropriate instruments for Marshallese youth in our community, so that those youth had the opportunity to share their music and their culture with their fellow students and classmates. So that might be another approach to this, would be maybe there's a program that you're putting on where you where there's particular materials, instruments, supplies, again, materials that are culturally appropriate that the funds could be used for to make that experience more authentic. So now to go into the rating criteria for this program, there'll be five major questions, major narrative questions that you're asked in the application process. And they are each scored equally. And we'll go through these questions in more depth here, but those five chunks of the rating pie involve scoring the project description and use of funds narrative response. The next area or the next question that you're asked has to do with how this project or activity advances your organizational goals and meets a community need. The third area of scoring is related to the applicant's readiness to implement, as it's demonstrated in their response in the application. The fourth criteria area is measurement and evaluation, as you define it within the scope of the project to measure and evaluate the success of the program. And then the fifth area is rating related to the impact or sustainability of this project or program as it relates to future programming for your organization. So the first question that you're asked in the narrative section of the application is to describe the project or the activities to be conducted and how the funding support for said activities will empower and elevate BIPOC creatives and culture in Dubuque. So a piece of rating this question is looking at the budget expense section of your application. So those numbers that you provide there do go into account when this particular question is scored. Like I mentioned, all of the narrative questions are rated on an equal scale. Each one can be awarded either 3, 2, or 1 points, which getting a score of 3 is basically sort of an outstanding exemplary response to that question, and there's a rubric provided in terms of how that exemplary piece is defined. A 2 is sort of for an average kind of standard response to the question being asked, and a score of 1 is attributed whenever the response really just doesn't hit the mark on what is being asked. So like I said, each one of these has a rubric. So for this question in particular, to get a score of a 3 on this response, the reviewers are going to be looking for a description of the activity being very clear and easy to understand, that the proposal as they're reading it really epitomizes the funding program's purpose and the goals of this funding, and that the project being proposed aims to maximize the impact of engaging BIPOC voices in the project, and that the use, and then for this one, again, looking at that expense budget piece, that the way that the grant funds are proposed to be used is very well defined and feels appropriate to the scope of the project. So again, with each of these, there's a rubric area that you can read through to help define what we're looking for in response to each of these questions. The second question that you'll be asked is to discuss how the proposed activities align with the applicant's organizational goals. Really, how does this fit in with what you're doing or want to be doing as an organization? And also, how do these proposed activities aim to meet a community need as you define it, or have identified it, whether through the work of your own organization, or perhaps it's something that you've identified and are calling out as a community need as it's been noted in a particular city plan, such as Imagine Dubuque, the Arts and Culture Master Plan, the Equitable Poverty Prevention Plan. Things like that can be looked at as the providing evidence of it, of the community need being identified, being called out. The third question that you're asked to provide in the narrative is to offer us a timeline of the activities that you'll be conducting with this project, and to identify key staff, volunteers, or others who will be involved in carrying out those activities. We would like you to take this opportunity to briefly describe how each of these people that you're identifying was selected to be involved with the project. We do anticipate that some of these proposals are going to include activities that are still in evolution and being developed. So you might not have all of your key personnel identified that are going to be taking place or taking part in carrying out these activities. So if they're not identified and called out by name, that you can take this opportunity to discuss what you're thinking about, what your plans are for identifying, engaging those persons, and what their roles are intended to be in the proposed activities as you see them. So the fourth question that is asked is, how will you, the applicant, define and measure the success of your project or activities? This is really an opportunity for you to clearly define meaningful outcomes and identify performance indicators that you are aiming to achieve through these proposed activities. And we'll also be looking at this in the response to this, that the methods that you're identifying that you'll be measuring and evaluating the success on seem logical and feasible for the scope of the activities as they're described to us. And then the final question really looks to, we want to be funding things that hopefully have some longevity and propel your organization forward in its DEI work. So we want to hear how this fits into that future programming. How will this help to advance that future programming that might be identified in long-term planning strategies that you have? And this might be sort of like seed funding to really get something new going with your organization. So talking about how you plan to sustain these activities beyond the GARE funding, whether things like this will just simply be incorporated into your regular operating support. Perhaps this is a pilot of something that you'll be looking for future sponsorships to keep going with your organization. Really just we want to hear how this fits into your organization and how you see it, pieces of it being maintained and sustained with your organization into the future. So before we go into the actual application process and look at what that looks like, I wanted just to talk about how do you submit an application to the GARE Regranting program. So all of the applications must be submitted online. The website that you can go to if you want to just start out right with the online application is to go to cityofdubuque.slideroom.com, and this will take you right to our SlideRoom portal. If you would prefer to start with a PDF of the application questions and sort of do some prep work before you start in on the application, you can go to cityofdubuque.org/artsgrants and look for the GARE Regranting program, which there will be links to PDFs that you can download of the questions and the guidelines. You'll also see when you go into the SlideRoom space and click on the GARE Regranting program that there is a preview of the application right there that you can print out as well. So as you prep your application, just keep in mind that answers are limited to maximum character counts, and these maximum character counts do count the spaces. I think with all of the narrative questions that I just reviewed, each of those is a 3,000 character count limit. And then another item that I just want to know is that there are a few attachments that we ask for in this application process, and that we just ask you to only attach what's being requested and to be mindful of the requested document length in a couple of places with documents that you upload, we ask that they are limited to no more than one page. Also, in terms of submitting an application, it is just to keep in mind that it is you, the applicant, and not city staff, which is solely responsible for the content of your application. We don't allow for changes or additions after the application has been submitted, unless we on our end, as we're reviewing applications to make sure that everything is in compliance. If we see a glaring error of something that was missed, it seems like something might not have uploaded correctly, we might reach out to you to get further documentation. So just keep that in mind. The deadlines are strictly enforced, and this is really done through the process that at 11:59 on June 3rd, the slide room application portal will just turn off and expire and no longer be accessible. And as you go through the process of working on your application, if you ever have questions, just feel free to reach out to me and contact me at jbrant@cityofdubuque.org. At my email is probably one of the best ways to get a hold of me, or my mobile number, which is 563-513-5636. And I'm typically available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. If you have technical difficulties with the actual technology of Slide Room, this might be everything from having password issues to seemingly, if you happen to, it seems to have glitches as you go through Slide Room. I do ask that you reach out to Slide Room directly at their support@slideroom.com email to get a hold of them to address any of those technical issues that might happen with the Slide Room space. They are very responsive, but I also will note that in submitting an email to Slide Room, I believe you get an automatic reply that says it can take up to 2 days or 48 hours for them to reply to you. So definitely log in, start your applications early, and make sure that you're able to get in and navigate the space, and not just wait till the last minute to get to work on that in case of technical difficulties. So in terms of the technology piece of this, how do you find that online application and all the things that the guidelines and questions we've talked about today? Where this is the city's landing page, that if you were to go to cityofdubuque.org, you can go there, click on the Doing Business tab at the top, which will bring down this drop down, and you would click on Arts and Culture. By clicking on Arts and Culture, it takes you to cityofdubuque.org/arts and culture. So you can also just type that in directly to get to these program materials more quickly. Once you are on that Arts and Culture main page for the City of Dubuque, on the left-hand side, there's a series of navigation points that can get you to more information. The one that you'll want to look at is the Funding Program tab, which when you get here will have just a little plus sign here. You would click on that plus, and then it will drop down all the options of more information that's available within that funding program section of our website. And in there, you would have clicked on the GARE Regranting program, which takes you to a page that looks like this. It doesn't have this orange block or this big yellow oval here, but the background here is what that page will look like. It has the information that we're talking about today. It has the links to download the guidelines and the rubric as a PDF. It has a link to download the application questions as a PDF. And in this box here, this click to apply online, when you click on that button, it will take you to the Slide Room application so you can begin working on and completing that. So that button, again, that's going to take you to a page that looks like that. You will have moved from the city's website to our Slide Room portal that's hosted at Slide Room. I'm going to click on this link so that we can go in and actually explore the application. And so you can have a little bit of that experience navigating that. Let's see. Okay. So, I'm already logged in. So if you're already logged in, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to sign out, so you can have the experience of actually starting from a place where you're not logged in. So if you already have an account with SlideRoom, you enter your username and your password up here, click the login. If you are an organization who has applied for funding through the Iowa Arts Council, you can use that same email address and username that you use to access the Iowa Arts Council SlideRoom. You can use that to access ours as well. So basically, as a user in SlideRoom, you have a single account that gains you access to any entity that has a profile on SlideRoom. If you don't have an account with SlideRoom already, you would click the sign up button, which would take you to a screen like this, where you would enter your email address, a password, confirm that password, agree to the terms of service and privacy policy for SlideRoom, and then hit the sign up button, and that will take you through the process of creating an account. So since I already have an account, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to type in my password. And I must have typed it in incorrectly, so give me 1 second here. Okay, try that one more time. Okay, got the right one that time. Sorry about that. Okay, so now I am logged in. I am seeing here, this is my SlideRoom account, and I'm on the cityofdubuque.slideroom.com portal space. These are all of our currently open programs that people can apply for. So there's our operating support program with applications due April 29th, our special projects program with applications due May 13th. And then the one we're going to explore today is the GARE subgranting program with applications due June 3rd. So I'm going to click on this. It'll take me to a sort of a landing page for the program that just provides the basic purpose and overview of the program. I can click begin application and it will take me directly to the questions. Or as I was mentioning before, here is where you can preview your application by clicking the preview full application. It will provide you with all the overview of all the information that you have to provide as part of this application. And then if you wanted to print this out from here, there is a print button in this upper right hand corner that will either that you can hit print and then you can print it out from your printer or save that as a PDF. But instead we're going to go here, we're going to begin the application. So you'll see here that there's a form section and then a submit section. There are 5 different forms within this section. The first form is simply for you to provide contact information for your organization, for you as the applicant. So name of your organization, address, your website, if you have one, your website. If you don't have a direct URL, this could be a Facebook page that you take us to, whatever is your main website presence. And then if you have other electronic presences such as Facebook page, Instagram page, YouTube channels that you'd like to send us to so we can see more about your previous programming, you can add those in this section. That is not required. We ask for the name of your executive director or board chair, or this can also be defined of just whoever is the the lead of your organization if you're one of those unincorporated groups. And then if the person completing this grant application or the person responsible for this program, who should be the main contact, is different from the executive director or board chair, you can add their name, email, and phone number here as well. This contact form is not scored in the review process. So we're going to continue on to the next step. One of the things that you may note here, it's SlideRoom does automatically save your changes, which is very nice. And if I try now to continue to the next step, one of the things that it will do as well is that it allows you to go through the various forms in SlideRoom. So for those of you that have used our previous form center, you were not able to do this. You had to complete each form before you moved on to the next. In SlideRoom, you can actually bounce around and it will give you little warning signals, these little red triangles with the exclamation points to let you know that you have, there are required questions that remain unanswered in a particular form. Once you have all of these pieces completed on a form, that red triangle will change over to a green check mark. So as soon as I'm just adding some gibberish in here to have something in these spaces, it's automatically saving that. Or just to double check, I'm going to tell it to save the changes. And now when I hit continue to next step, my little red triangle has changed to a green check mark, which means that everything that was required on that form has been completed. The next section of the GARE application is the organizational profile section. This is not scored, but provides an opportunity for us to get to know just in general, get to know you as the applicant organization. So there's an opportunity here to state your mission and to briefly tell us about your primary programs. If you're not an arts and cultural focused applicant, that arts and culture isn't part of your primary mission as an organization, tell us about your primary mission, but then also use this space to tell us how arts and culture are integrated in or important to the work that you do and how it helps to advance your organizational goals and priorities. Here is that drop down that I think I mentioned earlier, that you'll select which type of eligible organization that you are. And then here we ask that based on the type of eligible organization that you are, that you upload documentation that affirms that eligibility status. And we provide you with examples of what we mean by that. And then we ask for another uploaded document. Again, this is one of those where keeping the upload to a particular length, we ask for just one page, but to upload a document that outlines who your key leadership, staff, volunteers, board of directors, etc., are with you, the applicant organization. And if, as space allows, we ask you to tell us, provide their name, their role, how long they've been with the organization. And if there's somebody who's going to be intimately involved with the project you're proposing, you might provide a very brief statement, 1 or 2 sentences that mentions how or why they were chosen to be part of this particular project. So that's one of the areas. Again, I didn't have all of the questions filled out on the profile, so it gave me that little red triangle. The proposal narrative, this is where you, those questions that we went through just a little bit ago, where you have the opportunity to provide your narrative responses to each of those. Again, it shows you the character count here, and this will count down as you add information, as you add text and copy in here. Just each of those are a required question. The next part is the budget section. So the way that this is laid out is you have your first section that to provide us with all of the expenses that are going to be covered by the grant itself. When you open this up, it provides you with one row, and then as you have additional expenses, you can add as many rows as you need here. There's a column where you can provide a description of the expense, and then in the second column, you're providing the actual dollar amount there. The second section of this budget area is matching expenses. So again, you do not have to provide match expenses. There is no match required with this program. But if you do have a match, we ask you to tell us about it to demonstrate the breadth and the full scope of the activity that you're proposing to be funded through the GARE funding. And then the third is just a single field where all of the grant request expenses and all of the match expenses are combined to provide your total project cost here. So this should be a total of these two sections above. And then finally, there's assurances that we just to things that you're acknowledging by submitting an application to this program. So one of the first thing that we're asking you to acknowledge and assure to is to confirm that you have read and understand the program guidelines and funding policies. The second is that you certify that all representations and statements that are made in the application are true and correct to the best of your knowledge. The third is that you understand that we might reach out to you for further documentation to determine eligibility for the organization or the project, or maybe reach out for clarification if need be. The fourth is that because you are submitting materials to the city of Dubuque, that this information is public record should it be requested to be reviewed by the public. Fifth is that we do ask with all grantees that you acknowledge the city of Dubuque support and materials and announcements related to the project that's being funded through this. So we do provide you with some suggested credit lines and access to our logos for download and inclusion in marketing materials. And then finally, you have an option, if you don't already receive it, if you would like to receive the City of Dubuque Arts and Culture News email newsletter, and then just the name of the person and the title of the person who's authorized to submit this application on behalf of your organization. So once you would have all of these areas filled out, I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint now. Once you would have all of those filled out, your forms at the top would have the green check mark next to it if everything is complete. The GARE program does not have additional attachments outside of the forms, so this attachment category will not be at the top. And if the forms has a green check mark next to it, then it will give you a prompt that says that you are ready to submit your application, and it will show you a blue submit application button down here at the bottom. So in order to submit, you click that button, and your next screen that you'll see looks something like this, where it tells you that you've successfully submitted to an application to the City of Dubuque Arts and Cultural Affairs, gives you the date which you've submitted on along with a confirmation number. You have options to print out this confirmation as well as to print a copy of your application if you would like. As long as you maintain your account in SlideRoom, you always have the opportunity to go back to past submitted applications. So that will be, the application will be connected to your SlideRoom account as long as you have it. So you don't have to print out a copy of that application now, but you can. And then once you're all done with your work of submitting an application, here is the work that we do on our end, just so you have an idea of how that plays out. It will be my responsibility as the Arts and Cultural Affairs Coordinator to be receiving all of your applications and reviewing them all for compliance on eligibility, both as an organization and related to the expenses that you're proposing. I'll be the one who's reaching out and providing updates to you as the applicants, and then also working with the reviewers on the review process. Next, those applications move on to a review panel who reviews and scores all of the applications based on the rubric we provide them with. Those scores are then compiled by staff and they get forwarded to the Arts and Cultural Affairs Commission, who considers the funding options based on the scoring, ranking, and the amount of funding that we have to distribute overall. The commission comes up with that funding recommendation that is then forwarded on to the city manager and the city council for them to review and approve, and every once in a while to adjust what the commission's funding recommendation was. And then after we get the thumbs up from city leadership, then I, as the staff, will work with legal to draft contracts and distribute those to grant awardees. I will be the one that any contracts are sent back to after they've been executed, and then I forward those on to the city manager for his signature. I'll be the one that you want to send your invoices to for payment, and then those get forwarded on to our confidential account clerk and to finance for payment. And then I will also manage, not Mangs, I will manage public announcements and media related to the grant award. So typically we do a press release, put it on our website, announce it on social media, and some similar things to get the word out about the exciting projects and programs that you have all put forward and that are receiving funding through this program. So last little bit here is just some helpful tips. So just again, like in any good grant writing, to review and prepare your application materials early, especially with if the possible need to do any troubleshooting in regards to the technology piece of things. And also in terms of if you have questions, it's better to reach out early with those questions and instead of waiting till the last minute. We've provided that PDF to help you draft responses to the narrative questions. We hope that that is helpful to you. I do suggest that if you have Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat Reader, you can convert that PDF into a Word document and you can type right into that in order to check your character counts using word count tools and things like that. And then you works really slick to copy and paste from a Word document into the online form. Keep in mind that as you check those character counts, that it does include the spaces. So those 3,000 character limits do count all the spaces that are in there in your written response. Keeping community outcomes and the impact of the community impact you hope your programs will have at the front and center of telling the story in your application. And again, just to feel comfortable, please reach out to me if you have questions or concerns as you go through the process. So we strive to be here for you in your work and in what you're proposing through your application. So again, you can reach out to me. My email is jbrant@cityofdubuque.org. I've provided both of my phone numbers. The first one is my office phone. The second is a mobile number, which is a little better to reach me at, and you can also text me at that number. And I'm mostly available Monday. My work hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. is the best time to get in touch with me. If for some reason you can't or are having trouble getting in touch with me, you can also reach out to our intern, Mike Williams, at the edintmwi@cityofdubuque.org. Mike has some additional ways to get a hold of me. So he can be of assistance in that way. And finally, again, with the technical slide of the slide room platform, if you have questions or issues with that, please reach out directly to slide room for support. So with that, we'll just open it up for question and answers. Let's see, I know there was a question related to whether let's see. Let's see, there's a question related to whether Latin American, Latinx descendants are considered part of that BIPOC category. Yes, they would be programs engaging them would be part of that. Okay, I don't think we have any other questions. If you do have other questions that come up, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Again, email or phone number works really great to get in touch with me. I will be, let's see, we will be adding the recording of this to the city's website for playback. I'll also be adding to the city's website the PDF of these slides so that you have the document of what we covered, just to go through a little bit more quickly than having to return to the recording. And then again, if you have any other questions as you begin work on your application, just feel free to reach out to me and ask. So thank you everyone for joining me today and for your interest in the GARE Regranting program, and have a great Friday, and we look forward to reviewing your applications. Okay, thanks.